I'm Daisy Hidalgo, and the claim I'm responding to is continuation schools do aid students who are credit deficient in graduating from high school on time and getting better grades. My opponent's secondary claims are many students with their grades falling low are dealing with their own personal issues and at-home problems. Continuation school gives a more reassuring and relaxed learning environment. It can change a student's perspective towards education. And my response to it is continuation schools are inconsistent towards any evidence or proof of majority of students who achieve better academically. Onto claim one. My advocate claims many of the students with their grades falling low are dealing with their own personal issues and at home. Also, continuation schools can help students with anxiety by removing triggers. There is no evidence given on possible personal issues that can contribute or be a reason on the low grade students have. Not only that, but we are not given the evidence on what triggers are removed, what happens in continuation schools, and how it helps students with mental illness. While I'm fully aware of what mental illnesses play a role in individuals who have them below, especially being a student on top of that, I'm not dismissing that, but questioning the explanation on how continuation schools help those individuals struggling with mental illnesses. Onto my second claim, response to second claim. Continuing evidence, my advocate states there's statistically more smaller classrooms due to smaller student environment. This gives teachers ability to give more one-on-one attention, but we are not given any statistics on any continuation schools who do have smaller classrooms or a variety of statements from students on how teachers are able to be there for students more often than a non-continuation school. When classrooms are smaller, teachers usually are given more time to spend with students individually. However, this goes for any classes that are smaller. Having continuation schools use this to the best of their ability to help these students. And on to my third and final response to the third claim. My advocate uses this from an article, Do California's Continuation Schools Really Work? By Tribune News Service states. But unlike Lopez Wilkins didn't connect with his teachers, he did the work, but there wasn't much incentive to show up. After missing 3 days in a row, he says he lost his spot at the school and dropped out altogether. Also, my advocate includes, there isn't always a way to make a student who refuses to recuperate graduate, but these schools are detrimental to students willing and wanting to reach the capping gown. My advocate uses both of these statements to make her claim stronger, but only contradicts herself even more when there's no supporting points along with it. Not all students get that happy ending that Lopez received after going to continuation school. If these schools are detrimental to students who are willing and want to graduate, what happens to those who refuse? These students are left behind and given up on when a continuation school is supposed to aid them. My advocate also uses Jolene Lopez as an example on a student who went to continuation school, who turned her life afterwards. Feeling like her teachers and peers cared, Lopez, 18, began regularly showing up for class, earning credits quickly and thinking about college for the first time. While some students, like Lopez, do choose to use continuation school to their advantage, this isn't the case for everyone. Every student chooses different paths. To conclude, as we learned from Wilkins, everyone's experience differentiates, and consistent proof of students who achieve greater academically because of continuation schools lacks greatly. Thank you.
What was that bicycle from?
For this miniature bicycle.
Highly unlikely. For the latter.
All right, structurally, things at the beginning were relatively clear, although in the preview, I think there are 3 points that you're laying out, and only 2 of them got numerically labeled. Then there's a counterclaim that you present, but there's not really much support for that counterclaim down below. You never really refer back to it, so I'm not sure why it's there in that particular spot. It might be appropriate on one of the individual points, and I think you could save it for that. The challenge on the first point is mostly has to do with the kinds of evidence that the advocate used or failed to use. You suggest that there isn't really much indication that that any information shows that the continuation schools achieve this objective, that they minimize the stress, or that they eliminate triggers, or that they solve everybody's problems. I think one of the things that's missing, either from the advocate's argument or from yours, is any data that suggests what successful the continuation schools are. In other words, what percentage of kids who end up going to a continuation school and complete and graduate. I don't remember that anybody has any data on this, and that seems like it would be the first standard by which we might evaluate these kinds of issues, and nobody's got any information on it. The challenge on the smaller classrooms, it's basically the same kind of thing. It's a press on the argument that's being presented here. You say, well, basically it's true, but it would be true of any class where there are a smaller number of students. That part is true, but if the continuation schools have a smaller number of students, it's always going to be true in those schools. But we're back to the same question. Where's the demonstration that this has made a difference or it has any impact on them? The advocate only has a couple of examples that you do challenge a little bit on the third point, but otherwise there's not really any evidence from your point of view that suggests that it's not succeeding. I don't know what the population of continuation schools in California is. We could probably discover that number with appropriate research. And I don't know the number that either return to traditional schools or complete a degree, and get their high school diploma when they finish the continuation school. Again, we're missing that data. On the third point, you kind of present the advocate's two pieces of evidence here and suggest that they're inconsistent in some way. I think that might relate to that first point that you were talking about on consistency. Although your argument is not as clear as it could be, what is it that's inconsistent about these two pieces of information? You suggest that it kind of contradicts itself, and I do like the idea that says that not every continuation student's the same, that they all choose their own paths, but that's mostly an assertion on your part, just as the assertion on the advocate's part is that smaller classrooms make for better results. Your argument is that kids choose different paths and some of them succeed, some of them don't. And I'm going, okay, so how does any of this demonstrate the advocate's point that the continuation schools make a difference? How does your information or lack of information show that that's not true? That's a little bit confusing. The idea that people might get left behind and they don't get included in the process because they end up at a continuation school, that I think is a good counterclaim, but again, there's no evidence to support it. And you just kind of pick at the example that the advocate provides here, which is reasonable to press their example, but you don't have any original research on your own. So if I was left to choose between an example on one side and nothing but an assertion on the other side, I'm probably going to be predisposed to trust the example, because at least I can recognize that that's information that supports the position as opposed to an assertion. All right, thank you. Jacob, you're up.